New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Reverend Robert with you over here.
Rev Z right here.
And this is New Thought today for April 2nd. No, it's not April Fool's Day any longer. April 2nd, 2024. I want to thank you for being with us. And in the spirit of spring, we want to try something a little different today. And we're going to have something, we're going to do something a little bit different than what we normally do today. I trust you're going to enjoy what we're coming up here with. So please feel free to chat along, chime along, join the conversation, ask your questions, leave your comments, let us know you're out there. We really do love to interact with you. Naomi, good to see you, dear one. Glad you're with us. You know, we do know many of you are watching this on a replay or at another time in your own time frame, and that's all well and great and amazing. And please, you're still welcome to leave comments. Feel free to join the conversation. Those that come after you will be able to see those as well. So, and Z, before we want to get started today, I want to share something that I found really, really interesting. Two things. Number one, Sunday was International Trans Day of Visibility. And for anyone that might be considered, no, it's not a conspiracy to get rid of Christianity or Easter. I've heard both of those theories in the last couple of days. But Sunday was Trans Day of Visibility. And in that, I was very, very happy to see so many different New Thought communities doing something, anything. And I got on a call today with a whole bunch of people from around the New Thought movement, a big open kind of phone call, and a lot of people talking about the things that we have to do to ensure that the science of mind specifically is still relevant to the growing generations. And one of those things that was very, very loudly, if you will, spoken was the need for more inclusive language. And in numerous occasions, I heard calls for a rewriting of the Science of Mind textbook in gender inclusive language.
Interesting.
Which I thought was really interesting. Exactly. And it was by far the prevalent voice on this call of about 80 people. It was by far the prevalent voice. Now, I also want to say, my understanding is we've got several thousand practitioners and several hundred ministers. And so a turnout of 80 is probably not all, and that's just the Centers for Spiritual Living numbers. And so a turnout of 80 is not that huge, but there were some really good voices in the room, really looking at, hey, where do we go when it comes to the future of New Thought? And so, so there we are. There's where we're kicking it off. We didn't prepare very well for today, so please do forgive us for that a little bit. But Z, how do you see it? How do you see the the pronouns and gender languaging playing a role in the future of what we do here in New Thought?
Yeah, well, I think it's key, because, and it's fitting, right? Because one of the things that we do when we speak of God, right? We try very hard not to put it in just masculine terms. I mean, we've started, some people say mother, father, God, or, stay away from that altogether and use spirit, infinite mind, universal wisdom, source, spirit. Um, so that uh foresight, if you will, to make that change early on from a divine perspective, because it was causing some exclusion. This falls right in line in terms of uh let's make it neutral, because we don't have any idea where a person is on a spectrum, if you will, right, of identification, or how they choose to communicate with the source of all there is. And so the moment you start locking it down to a more specific term, the more likely it'll be somebody will say, well, this does not reply. I mean, this does not apply to me.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Or at worst, it's excluding me, and I most definitely don't want to be involved, right? Or read it or hear it or whatever the case might be.
Yep. Well, and I do have a sense of trust for the organization that the conversations we have definitely point to how are we being more inclusive of people. And if somebody feels excluded, I trust that they're raising that concern, they're voicing that feeling, so that it can be dealt with, so that we can look at it, so we can say, okay, what is it about this that makes you feel that you're being excluded, so that we can do the both and kind of thing.
Yes.
Now, the other thing I heard that was really important, I think, also on this call, was a recognition that something you and I have been saying for a long time. We can't keep doing it the way it's always been done, the way our forefathers did it, the way our mentors did it, and expect to reach younger generations with their perceptions of life and livingness. And we know people have been running away from the word church for a long time, and now it would appear they're even having a little bit of an aversion to the word center, because so the focus was around, how do we get the word out? How do we share this message in different and unique and let's say more age topical ways?
Right. Well, I think one thing that would enhance that or help that cause, if you will, is we have to begin to use more relevant with more relevancy. I'll leave it there, and then say whether that be in terms of cinema or art or literature or social action, because the things that we mean other generations other than X and Z. I think X was before Z. I don't know. I get mixed up. I get them confused now. But their concerns, their points of reference are totally different from ours. And so if we keep trying to present ideas and points based on those reference points, it's like somebody that's a deep sea diver in Antarctic tries to make references to me who dives in warm water. I'm like, I got no reference, and so there has to be some reference points where we can connect, and then we can maybe go out and come back. But there has to be a starting point of reference, and I don't think that's there now.
Right on. Yeah, beautiful. Naomi is
Yeah.
adding, I love the word center. It makes me feel balanced, going to the center, etc. I'm with you, Naomi. Absolutely. And what we are finding is there are some demographics, let's say, that are still adverse to that.
Right.
And Linda says, I tend to use the terms divine, great spirit, all that is, that to refer to God. Sometimes I go modern and use the term the force. Yes, the force, universal intelligence, and depending on who we're speaking with. Now, this isn't an important part of the conversation. Depending on who we're speaking with, we want to use that kind of age-appropriate language. And one of the comments today was that this person was going to teach one of our accredited classes, went to look at the information. And even the information said that they recognized the language was outdated and the class would be updated, but the class had never been updated, and the language was so outdated. And 20 years ago, I got into this 20 years ago, and 20 years ago, a lot of this material was very difficult to read because it was at that point, it was already 80 or 90 or 100 years old. Here we are 20 years later, and in some cases, many of the New Thought traditions are teaching from the same material. I'm wondering, is it time to just kind of take all of our sacred texts and, I guess give them up to Chat GPT and ask them to bring us back a gender-neutral version of it and see what happens? Maybe this is a good use of AI in our movement. I don't know.
It would be interesting to see how that unfolds, right? Because I think about languaging, right? So one of the terms that a lot of young people are using today is the word vibe, right?
Yeah.
Oh, now that's a shortened word of a word that used to be real prevalent, if you will, in the early 60s and through the 60s up to the early 70s, but it was vibration, right?
Right.
And so now because it was all about the vibrations, and they had a song, good vibration, because it was a way of speaking of a energetic connection, an energetic presence. What we now know as quantum physics has kind of stepped in the arena and shed some light on that there is a connecting energy that connects us all. And if you're in tune, or you're tuned enough, you can feel the vibrations. You can feel when you're in a situation that's not conducive, or you meet someone who may be a little cantankerous or whatever. And so now they've taken that word and turned it into vibe, and it's the same thing, but we have to be able to not only understand that word uses, but be able to talk in that kind of vernacular so that they say, okay, I understand. And so that's going to be key. It's basically, I say it all the time. We have to get a thesaurus, right? And so now, they have on the internet, there's this thing called the Urban Dictionary. So where it takes a lot of slang and stuff and define it. Somebody say, oh man, that's fire, right? Well, fire means something that's good, right? In young people's language, right? Or, there was a time they still use a little bit, oh man, that's bad. But they meant bad as in good. Like it was a bad, man. I went to this party and it was bad. And it was like, oh, it was bad. No, man, it was bad, And so now we begin to figure out, okay, what's the nomenclature that we're using, right? Because there's a different language in computer science. There's a different one in mathematics. There's a different one in medicine. And we have to begin to look at it that way, I think.
Yes. I just opened up a can of worms. Who am I? So yeah, I'm gonna read just a little bit of this, and then we're gonna get back to what we always thought we were gonna do today. So I typed in provide a modern and gender neutral version of this text. And what I did is I just grabbed a few paragraphs from this thing called life.
Yes.
So what I asked ChatGPT to basically rewrite for me, the world is crying out for God, lost in the canyons of disillusionment where the trail runs out and stops against granite barriers that wall us in. We cry, why hast thou forsaken me? When war devastates the land and trembling we stand at the mouth of hell, listening to the screaming of airplanes, the wails of the wounded, and the terror of headlines, we cry, why hast thou forsaken me? Here's what it came back with. In the vast expanse of uncertainty that defies our existence, humanity often finds itself grappling with questions of meaning and purpose. Lost amid the tumultuous currents of life, we cry out, searching for answers to the eternal mysteries that surround us. Yet in our quest for solace and understanding, perhaps the key lies not in seeking an external deity, but in uncovering the boundless potential that resides within each of us.
Wow.
That's a lot different.
A lot different. And a lot more relevant, right? Because everyone's aware now of their personal power, if you will, and those that are on a spiritual path, if you will, I'll just say it, that they are also aware of that power being connected or generated or fueled by a greater power source.
Yeah.
And so it's right in line with what Mustard is teaching, is that, as Ernest said, there's a power greater than us and we can use it.
Exactly. Our dear friend Melinda is still with us. She says, I ponder, if our New Thought language has changed this much in 80 plus years, how much is the language of sacred texts such as the Bible changed in 2000 plus? Amen to that, Linda. And that's part of this whole journey has always been that we are trying to translate ancient concepts into modern day language so that, well, even I can understand it. Yeah. And I think that, I hadn't thought of it this way, but you're bringing me to that point. Is New Thought at that moment where we either truly update and modernize how we present this, or is it too late? Have we already lost the battle because there will always be somebody saying, well, that's not what Ernest said? And will there always be somebody going back to the original text and debating that my interpretation got it wrong, or GPT didn't account for this, or Elzia's word is just a little skewed because, well, he's a black guy, so of course his word's going to be a little different than the white version of yes. We open up a lot of can of worms when we start looking at these ideas.
But there's truth. I mean, a black perspective and a white perspective are very different.
Yes.
Right? Because of cultural, because of neighborhoods, of whatever, right? Yep. And so that's part of the challenge I see now, where with and I'll take a quick jaunt on a different path in terms of when I look at the whole thing of DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, right? Right now, there are individual corporations and individual entities that are beginning to disregard those kinds of efforts, but it's quite natural that there's something that they bring. There's something different about the environments that the two perspectives are coming from, and I always like to go to nature, and I saw this wonderful program on Nova last night about the human development and everything, and I won't bore you with the details, but one thing that was clear was that it was talking about birds, and it was talking about the birds that existed in the equatorial zone and in the rainforest. It's in those that were outside of that, where they were all birds, but they had different habits. They had different ways of taking care of their young, or eating, or building nests, right? So
Right.
you can't just say we're all birds, because yeah, okay, we are all birds, but there are different types of birds that have different habits. And it's the same with individual humans, but it gives us a full spectrum of life, or at least
Yep.
begins to.
Amen. Yes. Naomi is saying it's just like how Bibles for children are translated for them to be able to understand the stories and the values. Exactly. And
Yeah.
and I think it's time, and I don't believe I'm alone in this. I think it's time we start considering how to create new translations, perhaps, I was going to say, perhaps chapter by chapter, new translations of the science of mind, and let it be known that this is, the universal oneness version versus the Bible's got various versions. Why can't we? And not just in the simplicity, let's say, of the language. I'm not trying to dumb down the philosophy, but using a more modern language to go into the depth of the nuances of the principles as Homestead. And I think that's where a lot of people get lost. This is easy sometimes in practice, and it isn't so easy to understand in our everyday life. It takes a bunch of experience and a lot of stories and a lot of parables and a lot of practice, from my experience, to really be able to embody this philosophy.
Yeah. And when you were saying that, it just made me think about, there's the mathematical equation E = mc squared, right? However, they've taken that equation and added on to it so much more. All right, it's the foundation, right? But they've used that foundation to prove so many other theories and to come up with so many other points of view from a mathematical or energy or physics perspective, that it doesn't take away from E = mc squared. It just gives us a different way of using it, a different way of looking at it, applying it. And that's what we have to begin to do.
Yep. Amen. So here's how we're doing it, folks. I knew we'd find an opening for this eventually. If you've been following New Thought Media Network for any amount of time, you know that we're all about some new video ideas and new media ideas, and we want to share one of those with you right now, because we've really gotten into I've really gotten into creating shorts as of late. Not a lot of them yet, but we're getting there. We're building our library. And last August, I had the great pleasure to be at the Parliament of the World's Religions, where a vast majority of New Thought leaders were congregating. We were all there together, and I had the great opportunity to record and interview a bunch of these folks, and we're creating some clips and some shorts and some sound bites from them to help, we hope, because again, it's in the spoken word where we can be the most relatable.
Yes.
The written word is limited by the very nature that I can't ask a question. I can't read into anything. Here, we're trying a new form. So we want to share this with you now. This is Reverend Dr. Deborah L. Johnson of the Inner Light Center, based out of California. However, she's now based in Las Vegas. The ministry is still based out of California, and she's gone from a very robust and very active physical in-person ministry to a more hybrid ministry, and a bit more virtual ministry. And again, I got to talk to her last year at the Parliament. Here's a little bit of what she has to say about what is New Thought and see if this translates a little bit more to a little bit younger audience. We'd love to hear your comments once we finish this clip. It's less than a minute. Here we go.
New Thought is a spiritual practice. It is a practice of oneness, of non-duality, in which we are living what we refer to sometimes as universal spiritual principles, practically applying them to all of life's circumstances. Its genesis is from Protestant mystics who were really trying to figure out not so much the religion about Jesus, but of him. What was this power? What is this thing that he understood that enabled him to be able to perform the kind of miracles that he was able to perform, and to do the healing work that he was able to do? And understanding that we all have that power within us, and we're all about how do we learn that, activate it, and use it for good in the world.
There we go, Z.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, and you know, if you take that, you know, I'm going to go back to the math again. You know, I love to go there. You know, if you're doing fractions, they always tell you to reduce it down to the simplest terms, right?
Yes.
And so when you look at what Reverend Deborah just said, in my mind, the simplest terms is, how do we take this power that is everywhere present, as Ernest says, and as she indicates, that was fully displayed and demonstrated by Jesus? How do we find that, understand that, practice that, and then implement it into every aspect of our lives, i.e., work, pleasure, family, arguments, whatever, right? Because if we look at the life of Jesus, we see Jesus hung out sometimes with the so-called unsavory characters. He chastised those who thought they were in leadership. He made fun, if you will, with his disciples. So he had a full expression of how these teachings are used in every aspect.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to get, I think, not only the young people, but especially the young people, because we need to leave this legacy with them, but everybody else as well, so that we can begin to, as we say, create this world that works for all. If we got all this spiritual stuff and we're not providing an entry point for the young people, then we're not creating a world that works for all.
Right. Correct. Beautiful. All right. Naomi likes it. Thank you, Naomi. Linda likes it. Thank you, Linda. Thank you both very much. We got another one of those coming. We're going to do another one of those after the break for you. So, but I really dig into, it's a both and experience.
Mm-hmm.
However, in that conversation I was speaking about earlier today, something came to me that I think is really important. A both and experience doesn't require that I have both experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take the Jesus example. For some in New Thought, Jesus is the way shower, the avatar, the teacher, the great example, not the great exception. And for some, the New Thought philosophy, I guess, or a teachings of New Thought would not be complete without our complete share, without a full teaching of Jesus's teachings.
Mm-hmm.
And for some, we know that doesn't work.
Right.
Maybe there's some history, maybe it's just the whole, all the packaging, and we kind of, some think it would be sacrilegious to have a religious science church that doesn't have Jesus at its center and mentioned every week. and some think it's sacrilegious to even mention Jesus every week or at all, and have moved beyond that. And I think for the average, I don't want to say average, for many people, we want a both and. But if I don't need the Jesus story to inspire me, if I don't need Jesus to be the example, if I can live these principles and practice these practices in a way that allows me to live a contributing life, to be a beneficial presence on the planet, why am I being forced to go back and learn what Jesus said about all this? I figured this stuff out from Joe Dispenza. Thank you or whoever, right? For me, it was Ernest Holmes. For me, it was Ernest Holmes and some others. But it's, I think we're at a really unique turning point in how we are inclusive without demanding that everybody has to have every single experience and has to learn how to interpret every single teacher that's ever come along.
And you know, that's interesting, because my dad would always tell me, he says, you know, you want to know the experiences, but you don't necessarily have to make every experience yours. If you see somebody stick their hand in fire and they get all burnt up, is, you know, you didn't have that experience directly, but you understand what that experience is. Now, if you want to do it, you're welcome. But to get the lesson of what it means to stick your hand in the fire, you might not have to stick your hand in the fire to that degree to understand it. And that's how we have to begin to look at this. Everything is not for everybody, right? If I got diabetes, I can't go around eating a lot of sweets. If I don't have diabetes, well, I still shouldn't go around eating a whole bunch of sweets, but I can definitely eat more than the person that's diabetic.
Yes.
So it's this, you know, it's that same kind of principle in my mind that says, hey, we have to, as we say, meet people where they are, or meet the situation where it is, and not become fundamentalists.
What? Wait, what? I'm not being. Thank you for that. All right. Hey, folks, we're going to take a real quick break and let a couple of our sponsors say hello, let you learn a little bit more about what's happening here around on the New Thought Media Network, and allow Rev Z and I to grab a quick drink of water. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in 1 minute. Don't go away. Stay tuned. Hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Let your friends and family know what we're doing as well. We'll be right back. And we're back with more of New Thought today here on the New Thought Media Network. I'm Rev Robert. On behalf of my co-host, Reverend LZ, and I, we thank you for being a part of what we're doing. And please do consider joining our social media platform. Head on over to the website, ntmedia.org. Along the top bar, you'll see a little link that says community. Follow that around. And we'll get you signed up for our online platform. It's a great place to hang out, great place to communicate, great place to learn more about what we're doing here on New Thought Media Network. So, all right, Z. So I want to dig into this second clip that we have here today, because one of the questions I asked folks at the Parliament of the World Religions is, what is New Thought? Another question that I ask folks is, what is the future of New Thought? And this is Reverend Dr. Kevin Ross. He's from
Unity Movement
of Sacramento, and also has recently finished a master's program at Harvard Divinity School, and has actually been having some of numerous people that have been presenting at Harvard in a speaker series with him. So let's listen in and have a little listen to what Dr. Kevin Ross thinks is the future of New Thought.
One of the concerns within our Unity movement, not in our New Thought movement on the whole, is that while we have this great vision for co-creating a world of peace, prosperity, and unconditional love for all, we get stuck where the social change and activist work comes along. And so what I see as the future of our New Thought movement is more individuals getting the tools that they need, our leaders getting the tools that they need to actually and practically be change agents within the world, not only from the educational perspective, but how we influence policy and how we influence society and how we open pathways for a world that indeed works for all. So I think the next level for us is that our leaders become agents and activists for the world that we are building.
Thanks for watching New Thought Media Network.
All right, so there we have it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what it's about. And I, speaking from a Black church upbringing perspective, the church was always an activist point of view. The Black church always started out as a point of activism. And it was a place to go and have Sunday service, but it was also a place to go learn to read when you wasn't supposed to read. It was a place that you could potentially be a part of the Underground Railroad and to move people through and out of slavery. So when we look at the tradition of Dr. Martin Luther King or Dr. Joseph Lowry or some of these other Black ministers, Malcolm X, it goes on and it goes beyond tradition. It ultimately got down to an activist point of view of how do we begin to actively put people, places, and things in place for people to get justice, for people to have equality, for people to feel like they belong. And at the same time, not denying or discounting the diversity that people bring to the table.
Okay. So here's the thing. Here's the thing I hear the most. New Thought teaches us that our work is done in consciousness and consciousness alone. At what point? Nah, I don't want to say it that way. It's a very because I get lost a little.
Yeah.
I think that, to me, I feel that when something is in our consciousness as being ineffective, improper, just not right, that I feel called to do something about that. And so when do we become a consciousness of activity? When do we get the activist consciousness? When did activism become a dirty word? And did we ever actually have any real activism in this movement? You've been in the philosophy just a little bit longer than I have. Did it ever feel safe to be a Black activist within this movement?
No, not at all. And I can distinctly recall, because I came in not really seeking to be a minister. At the time, I was and still consider myself a Muslim, and I was taking the classes because I loved the teaching. And so I got to the end of my term and getting ready to graduate, and I was asked, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to be an Islamic religious scientist. And they said, oh no, you can't say that. You can't be that. I'm like, why?
Why
I was
not?
taught in the very beginning that this is not a religion. This is a spiritual tradition that allows us to understand and see the golden thread between everything. And I'm saying I see that for me. So this doesn't require me to give up my teachings that I believe, the faith tradition that I believe. So there we go. And they said, oh no, you can't do that. So of course we had a stalemate, and I just left it. But short answer to that, short question answer to the long answer I just gave was no. It was not there. It was like the dining philosophers. We had great conversations. We talked about things. We did some food. We gathered some cans of food and we gathered clothes. It was just a level of activism, but that's safe. I mean, you don't really have to get involved.
Is that activism or is that just charity?
Yeah, well, okay.
There's sometimes to me the whole, hey, bring in a can of soup and we'll get it to the people that need it. Bring in some toilet paper. We'll get it to, bring in a backpack. We'll get it to the people. But can you call that activism if the people that are giving aren't in some way directly connected to the movement, to a movement, to the people that do receive, is giving and receiving so separate that I can just give and be absolved and say, and because it seems like there's an awful lot of white people that like to give soup but can't say Black Lives Matter.
Right. Yeah. Well, I agree. It actually is more charity than activism. And so I think
which is going to bring me back. Which is going to bring me back to what Kev was saying. Rev Kev was saying, as New Thought, is our work in some way not providing our leaders and individuals with tools and resources and information and classes? Like, where is the class on being a religious science, a conscious activist? Where is the class on how to show up at a rally or a demonstration and be nonviolent? Where are the tools? And I guess I'm asking you, totally unprepared, what tools do we need? Where would, if given everything and you had the magic wand, where would you start in the New Thought movement to help embrace and demonstrate some of what Rev Kev is suggesting here?
Yeah, I think right off the top, I can come up, I think, with 3 tools, right? We have to teach the idea and concept of being articulate, right? We have to be able to speak the words without going to profanity or name calling, or, we have to be eloquent in our speech, right? Because although we just said that there's an issue with some reading, but if I'm speaking, you're going to get my energy. When we look at our charismatic leaders who are in the activist movement, they were eloquent speakers. And they were able, and by eloquent, I mean to be able to speak to the audience. So if we're dealing with non-PhDs, I can speak at that level. And then if we go to the PhDs, I can speak at that level. And if we're at the politicians, I can speak at that level. So that's the first thing. We have to become very articulate in stating the problem, presenting some solutions, not just present a problem, but also a couple of viable solutions to the problem.
Yeah.
The second thing would be, we have to learn, I'll say, patience and temperance. I'll put those together because often those individuals that have been activists, there's somebody who don't want the system to change that will be an antagonist, and they will put all kinds of things in your way to get you to break, to get you to not be patient, and patient in terms of understanding that, okay, I'm not going to let you push my buttons, because the moment they do, now they got you and they say, oh, here's the spiritual person, look at him, he's going crazy right now.
Yeah.
And then the third thing would be, is we have to begin to love everybody. I think people who are true activists, whether it's Mother Teresa or any of the others who we look at as an embodiment of that love, they really feel that, right? That I am helping everyone by doing this, and I'm doing it out of the love, and that's why I continue to do it, even though I may be taking on some personal suffering.
Yes, I like your temperance and patience piece. I like them all. The temperance and patience really hits. And any minister that's ever been in a pulpit has had to lead a community of diverse people with diverse ideas and diverse and varying locations along the spiral. Understands temperance and patience, and it isn't always easy because and what Rep Kev is also saying is we have to become active agents of transformation and change, not just inner transformation, but outward change. And I think that means getting involved with things like our local school board, or getting involved with nonprofits outside of the science of mind that are trying to do good work in the world, or getting involved with politics, or getting involved with the various activities of living a social life, not as I'm here to save you, not as I'm here to teach you the way, not as I'm here to give you new thought, but to simply be a living demonstration of these principles.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why I'll get on my soapbox again. I love nature, and I consider nature to be the ultimate sacred scripture, because all of these things are prevalent for billions of years, right? It shows the oneness and connectedness of all things, the connectedness of what's going on in the desert to what's going on in the Arctic, what's going on at various ecosystems throughout the world. It shows that if you destroy one, you will destroy them all. And so it shows that we have to be, and we have to be active about how we protect all elements of the whole, and to be active, to go and say, not to stir any pots, but to say that the climate is warming up and that we continue to build and we continue to cut down the trees, there's going to be a problem. And we have to remember that system dynamic term, that cause and effect are not always closely related. And right now, in this digital technical world, we have this illusion that cause and effect are immediate. I send a text, I get a text back, right? Or I make a call and the phone rings, as opposed to I do something and we don't see the effects till 15 years later. It's like, too late now.
I send a message and your Facebook goes ping. And exactly. So I want to share something Linda said in here as well. To me, it felt like the activism became more acceptable when we had more LGBT members. It was helpful that our reverend leader was openly and actively gay. And I'm struck because I know of an example where within the last year and a half, and this person isn't even out. Actually, it hasn't even been a year since they've left the community. But a big part of the reason that they left the community was because they were being told they were being too open and too actively gay. And the board approached the minister, asking the minister, to don't go out with your friends. Don't do these things. Don't be open and active in living in being yourself and being your authentic self. And I'm not going to out that minister or that community, because I hope that community is learning from this. And I know the minister is moving on to a much better place, because I'm happy that you had that experience, Linda. And it is still not the norm, or I don't want to say it's not the norm, but there are still those outliers within New Thought that would completely have a completely contradictory experience. So again, kudos to you, Linda, and good for you and the people in that community. And yes, that did open a door within New Thought, I believe, where we were kind of slapped in the face that said, if we don't, we're getting left behind. I think we've always kind of just been, sort of glad handing people of color and pretending we were fully inclusive with people of color. And it was LGBTQ that really pushed us over that edge. And now we're facing new challenges. The gender question, the gender neutral question, not that it's really a question of transgender, but of how we embrace and openly and actively support the DEIB that is so necessary for the future of humanity.
I mean, you just think about it. We just had Women History Month, and there was the whole women's suffrage movement, right? That started in like 1913 and didn't really get fully embraced until like 1920 or something like that, right? So this idea of those in power, whatever the power is, making sure that they maintain power for whatever they think they can do with it, right, has always been an issue. And I think, whether conscious or unconscious, that happens in every sphere, right? Whether it's a relationship or organization or spiritual tradition. But we, as New Thought practitioners, we have to begin to have a new thought about how do we include people? How do we not alienate people? How do we make sure that there's room at the table for everyone and not have them clam up or worse, walk away?
Yep, exactly. Well, and Linda points to that as well. She says there were a handful of people who left for that reason, assuming that your leader was open and active, but about four times as many joined. So I think that's another part of the puzzle, is not being concerned that we might be vilified for being who we really are.
And see, here's where that word comes back in. Those that left, okay, they had a point of contention for themselves, but the vibe was so strong that it had 4 times, right? There was a vibration when those people came to that center and they saw that minister, and that minister was providing them with the energy, with the vibration, with the way of looking at life that was like more vibrant. Another vibe in there. Boom, things happened. They got motivated. They stepped in, and that's what we have to begin to do now. I'm going to use that now. We got to create a better vibe, a new vibe, to be vibrant, to vibrate, to be vivacious, and begin to live life so that people say, "Wow, they got it going on over there."
I think we have written your talk for Sunday. All right. Good. Or at least we got a good start going for your talk on Sunday.
Yes.
Tune in Sunday to CSL Denver to see how he fleshes all this out, folks. It'll be a fun time on Sunday morning. So, hey, we do have to say thank you to our individuals, to our organizational sponsors and individual donors before we leave here today, folks. And we also want to get to our final thoughts. So please stay with us. We're going to take just one more moment to say thank you. And then we'll be back with more of New Thought Today here on the New Thought Media Network. Please stay tuned. Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of our organizational sponsors and individual donors. If you'd like to support the New Thought Media Network, please head on over to ntmedia.org. Click on the donate button and make it a monthly donation. Make it a consistent contribution. You'll help get this New Thought message out across the planet. All right, Z, we've got just enough time for some final thoughts. What's on your heart? What's on your mind?
You know, I think my final thought for the day is figure out how to increase your vibe, meaning increase your presence, increase your practice, and increase your interjection into wherever it is you feel that you can contribute. And let that be the beginning of your activism, because I think we need it in so many places, whether that be going and reading to seniors, or helping young children read, or working at the soup kitchen, or, you know, many different things. Those are a minute example, but I think that's where we have to begin. And because that's going to put us in contact with people again. And I think right now, you know, that people interacting with people is an interesting phenomenon right now.
Well, and that's part of where I feel I've been getting that calling and a sense of it is time, folks. We need to get back out into the world. We need to start interacting. We need to start connecting, whether that's through a hobby or a club, whether that's getting involved with a community organization or local politics, your school board, any of those places. But now more than ever, we understand, you know, this stuff. If you're watching this program, you understand more than enough to do something.
Yeah.
Write a letter, make a phone call. If you can't get out of the house, if you don't feel there's an opportunity in your local community, there's ways to do all this virtually. But if possible, get back out into the world and start having some conversations. I featured a story on the Good News last week that a recent study proves that if you don't ask questions about politics, on the whole, the majority of Americans do not believe there is a divide or a division or a separation in who we are as people. The only place where that really shows up is in if you start asking questions about politics. But when we ask questions about who we are as people and what matters in the world and what matters in our lives, the research points directly to the fact that we are one, and we know it. So let's go out and act like it.
Amen.
I think that's all I got, Z.
Sounds like a plenty.
Exactly. Thanks again for being with us, folks. We've got a little bit more coming for you here on New Thought Media Network later this afternoon. Spanish language programming at 6 o'clock tonight in our 8:15 evening prayers. Stay with us. Thanks again for being here. Until next time, we want to wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.